Victoria over there. Hi, Victoria over there.
But what's funny, Ted is right here.
Edwin, let Ted know that his audio is very low.
And you can. My audio is low. Let me see.
You can't be product designers. That's hard. Yeah.
Maybe he's using his laptop mic instead of the lapel mic.
I've got 2B. Is that?
Check which mic is.
Can you just a second? I want to see something. Can you hear her?
I used to be a UX designer, but at the moment
I break technology.
Edwin?
Okay, so let me
Go ahead.
Well, I've got to go.
Yes, go ahead.
Edwin, I think Ted's got his laptop microphone on because we're not hearing him and we are hearing the room.
Okay.
Now, how do I get? Come here.
Steve says. Steve hypothesizes that you have your.
I know. So I want you to help me from. Yeah. How do I get to it? Oh, there. Okay.
Probably down here.
Right here.
Right.
Okay,
Or there.
Microphone. And which one do I want? Is this one on?
Your microphone array. What is the microphone array?
The microphone array is going to be the laptop.
There. Okay, that's on. And now, is that?
Can we do an audio check with Victoria?
Is this working now?
The odd.
Test speaker microphone. Microphone. Select.
Go down here, right click on this guy, on the sound.
That?
And then, I'm sorry, that was I need a right click.
This is Microsoft. This is not.
And then go to sound settings.
Okay.
Oh, okay, that's why Ted is always mentioning those.
And then, what is this section?
Edwin, I don't think we've done an audio check with Victoria yet.
Okay, hold on. Hold, please.
I was doing it.
Test your microphone.
I was doing it from Zoom. Isn't that where I want to do it from?
Okay, go ahead. No, but this Zoom can inherit ones that you have in here. So we want to make sure that you're not messing it up from here. Input settings, there you only have one choice. Okay. Do you know the name of this when it shows up?
Well, let me just show you what I have. Okay, I have select a microphone. And changing properties may cause out of transmission.
Okay. Ted's laptop only shows only recognizes one set of input
Can you put
for microphone. That would be a bad idea. Because
so I believe there's a problem with maybe this thing may be round. Remember we had that problem before?
Perhaps switch to the other battery or the other mic set.
Yeah, it's blue. I don't know what blue means.
Is
it had a microphone
is
pop
it
up.
all the way pushed in? There. USB audio. Okay, that's the one we want. Check in your Zoom now. Check in your Zoom settings as you did before. USB audio. Okay, you should be set now. Nope. I'm not sure. The one.
I don't hear Ted.
Okay.
Edwin, I don't hear Ted.
His fallback suggestion is that we use the laptop mics.
That'd be great. That'd be great, especially if he can raise the gain on his laptop mic a bit.
But what you're going to do is I'm going to use my microphone and my laptop until you're speaking, and we're going to use yours because this is not working.
We still need to do a mic check with Victoria.
We need to make sure we can hear Victoria next.
I understand. So and now I'm going to turn on my microphone. And can you hear me now?
Your microphone is not taking input. It's out.
I know, but I want to speak from my laptop.
Okay, we can hear that, but it's actually quite quiet. So see if you can come down here again. Right click on this speaker icon. No, down here on the screen. Right click on this guy. Yeah. Right click sound settings. And we're gonna go down here to choose there, that's right. Scroll down a little bit, and then here, where it says 78, we're gonna make that 100.
All right, does that sound a little better?
Yes,
That's
much better.
100% better, Ted.
Okay, well, in that case,
We
everybody,
need to
we're
check, we
gonna
need to check
change over
Victoria's
to,
audio.
We need to check that we can hear her.
yeah,
Victoria as
well, we'll turn mine if I have to.
The host would like you to unmute that. Well, it's just a microphone, right? Or do you want me to talk to my laptop?
I believe
I'd
that
like
to
none
have
of the
you talk to
microphones
me
are
one
working.
Do you want me to stay muted?
For
I'd
now,
like
I want you to
Victoria to
unmute. It'll
unmute
be
her
fine. We
Zoom.
really have to get going on this. Okay, so
I'd
I'm
like
gonna just,
Victoria to unmute her Zoom so that we can see whether her mic is working.
yeah. Hey, Joe Fish. All right. Good evening, everyone. This is BayCHI, June 11th, and we are at the beautiful other lab where we're going to be holding our talk tonight. And we've been holding talks since 1989, every week except for 9/11 and the first week of the pandemic. We are part of ACM. There are 75,000 members in it. SIGCHI is the most prolific member of ACM. It didn't always that way. SIGGRAPH is a very vital organization. There's many vital organizations besides us, but we really hope that you'll give us $20 every year because we put this on and we love having an organization in the Bay Area that has wonderful speakers, and we have the top speakers in the field speaking all every month. Please go to our Facebook and you can watch all those videos. Mark Davis was last month. Don Mormon was earlier this year. Ben Schneiderman was this year. Anyway, here is who we are. We are an organization of volunteers. And we have Kana doing publicity, Nikki doing in-person coordination, took us to a nice dinner tonight. Everybody, I love the idea of us getting together before the meetings and having these nice dinners. It was fabulous this evening for me anyway. I don't know. Some people just have a box of cardboard to take home. Steve Williams is always working very hard to keep the electronics and technology working in the group, and he's been tireless. And we have Mary Ann Ray and Steve Williams working on the newsletter. Edwin Lee runs a monthly program on the fourth Tuesday of the month, which is about people thinking about their careers in CHI. And also he runs a weekly work session. People are looking for jobs, might just get together and hang out and show each other what they're working on or not. And I work on programs, and we have Melissa, the interim treasurer. But today is our elections, and we are required to have these elections. So the elections, we only have nominations for me for chair, Edwin for vice chair, and Melissa for treasurer. Now, if anybody wants to put up their hand and say, I want to be elected, Alice Cooper talks about that. We would be delighted to hear from you. And even more so, I am even willing. It seems like a little bit of a slam dunk, we only having one group of people looking for jobs here. I'm actually not looking for a job. What I'm delighted to do anytime, any way, is to rescind my chairmanship and have somebody else take over. But until that happens, I'm the chair. I'm very excited about the program, putting together programs. I've got wonderful people like Victoria that sometimes agree to come. And let me just say, Victoria, who we're going to hear from in a few minutes, getting her to do this was, let's say, I think there was about 7 steps. Maybe there was a 12-step program involved. I think there may have been many things about her and her time and her remodel, maybe, and her job changing, and her boss and her anyway. So this is what happens. It's a lot of fun trying to figure out how we're going to fit these in. Next month, we're going to have Terry Winograd, and it's going to be that's not true. Next month, we're going to have Mark Stefik. Mark Stefik, who worked at Xerox PARC for 45 years and brought us Colab. He brought us Interlist D with loops. He brought us digital rights. Very, very prolific, inventive guy who Kai has not heard enough from. And anyway, we have, hang on, I've got to change. We're
What am I talking
yeah.
about?
So what is true, and again, is that, where is this? Down here at the bottom of this slide, notice it says movies as mother tongue, the provocative past and future of generative media. This talk last month, which I claimed was the best talk at Kai, the week of Kai, is now on video, just got put up. So that's exciting. But tonight we're going to talk about Victoria Bellotti, but we can't talk about her until we have our election. Were there any nominations that came in, Edwin?
No.
Oh, darn. All right. Well, damn it. Then in that case, we're going to hold an election, and all in favor of the chair being Ted, the vice chair being Edwin, and the treasurer being Melissa, raise their hand in this room and put your hands up online. And I see many people's hands going up. Anybody opposed? Are there any oppositions going on? Oh, and I see Steve voting for us and Victoria even voting for us. I'm not sure she's a Kai member yet, but it's all right. We have a tendency to give people honorary memberships for a year when they speak.
Oh,
So now you're a member, so you can vote.
right.
It was a shoe-in for me. All right. So that being done, very happy that's done. Now let me talk about Victoria talking about efficiency in UX research. Victoria, I think of her as an anthropologist. It's not probably true, but she's done just so much thinking and working in the Kai and thinking about new scenarios and interactions with Kai at Xerox PARC. One time she brought me in to do some envisioning about cars of the future. Very interesting conversation. It's incredibly broad experiences with lots and lots of projects, working with lots of different personalities, lots of different organizations. At PARC, let me just tell you, everyone is as brilliant as they think. So maybe you were there, what, 20 years? Yeah, 20 years. Yeah, so keeps a smile on her face. So we are very excited to have her, and she's going to be talking about this paragraph here. But I really shouldn't say too much more, except that her bio is online, and you'll see that she's worked at a lot of places in the last few years, getting a lot of experience that I hear seems even valuable to you. Yeah. So why don't you unmute your microphone, and I will mute mine, and I'll stop sharing, and you can start sharing.
My is turned on, so can you hear me? You hear me loud and clear? Okay, so I think I'm going to share my screen here. So it's the one that we're looking at.
Just one.
All right. How does that sound? Okay. Why do I need this microphone? Confused with all the trouble that went through with the microphone. All right.
Some things didn't.
Technology, 2 steps forward, 5 steps backward. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the introduction, Ted. Thank you, everybody. Edwin for the tech support. Thank you for everybody for showing up, and Melissa for promoting and hosting, and I guess Nikki was doing the promotion. That's right. You were.
Oh, I just on LinkedIn and Nikki posted.
Right. Okay. Yes. Cast of thousands and an intimate audience here tonight, and my partner is here as well, Pascal. Very, very long suffering. And I have to say, by the way, my boss at Bloomberg, I have the best boss in the world, by the way. So he's fantastic. His name's Fahd Arshad, and so just to say, it's not his doings that I was difficult to get. All right. So yes, I'm talking about efficiency in UX research. I hope that there's something here for everybody. Some of it may be old hat to some of the audience, and for which I apologize. But this, let's just see if I can make this slide change. Well, that's the first interesting thing, is the arrow button doesn't work. Okay, I just want to say a little disclaimer here. So the opinions here are my own. They don't represent any previous employer or current employer. It's a topic that's very close to my heart. I actually have sort of like this has been a passion for a while. Ted was like, don't you think it's a bit tooting your own horn to say that you're an efficient researcher? And yeah, I guess, but you'll see why it's kind of become like a really sort of sore spot. But I won't steal my own thunder. I'll get to that. So yes, what I'm going to be talking about is UX research. So what do I mean by UX research? So, well, I was there back in the day. I was at Apple. I joined in about 1994, and actually was there before Don Norman joined Apple. Actually, he arrived in 1995, and he's actually credited with the term UX. Now, that's really weird to me because I was in a group called User Experience Research, where I was the only user experience researcher. We had 2 designers, we had a couple of engineers, and Dan Russell was the manager. So go figure, because somebody came up with that term before 1995. Also, UX research, well, that was something that they were doing sort of as designers in the human interface group, which was led by Joy Mountford at the time. So the designers would go out, gather requirements, and understand the context of whatever they were building. There were, as far as I know, I may be wrong about this, but there were no full-time UX researchers. So I might have been the first full-time UX researcher that Apple ever hired. A weird, rare thing. There were other people in the Bay sort of doing this kind of thing. And around that time, I know for sure IDEO was also starting to hire UX researchers as well. And, you know, they did a great job about promoting it. So, you know, Tom Kelly has a number of books out there, and you can see there on the left, the anthropologist is the first person in line who has a title in all of these faces of innovation, right? They were really promoting and sort of saying, you know, you really need to go out there and understand customers. And, you know, UX research is just a continuation. I mean, people were doing research in product development. Before that, they were doing it in the army, you know, when they're doing it in air traffic control, all sorts of places. So I don't want to say like, you know, oh, we just invented this thing. I mean, it has a long track record, goes way back. So what do I mean by UX research? And by the way, so I just wanted to emphasize, it started in design organizations. So it seems to have had its birthplace, you know, in Silicon Valley and Apple's sort of big group, and it had it in IDEO, and then they spread it around. And so that's where it was. And it seems to still be mainly in design organizations. And so this is kind of like an issue for me, because I kind of have gotten into trouble with that positioning. So I want to talk about what I mean by UX research. So, all right, so what do shoppers in stores do to be more efficient? What do people think exclusivity means? What do we do to motivate people? There's a bunch of questions here which are not exactly what you would call design questions. They're more like company delivering value to customers questions, right? And so UX research or research can go way beyond design. I would say it's sort of like it's outside of the purview of just design. And this is one of my heroes, Michael Porter, talking about what is strategy. I don't know if you've ever read this paper. It came out in the Harvard Business Review in 1996. And it's one of the best papers ever written. It's really, really good, and sort of very insightful about what companies need to do to be successful. And one of the quotes from that is, a company can outperform rivals only if it can establish a difference that it can preserve. And so certainly that difference could be the user experience as designed by designers, but it's a bunch of other stuff as well. There are all sorts of things that could be competitive advantages, like better customer service or a better pricing deal, or, you know, there are many other things that could go into delivering value to customers. So, yeah, research can actually concern itself with the look and feel, the interaction, the context. I mentioned that the people at IDEO and the Human Interface Group would look at the context in which products would be used, for sure. But research can actually go further. It can sort of look out away from the product that you're thinking of building and just looking at that competitive landscape. Like, what are all the things that are out there? And, you know, weird things that could be your competition. And Reed Hastings famously said at Netflix, where I used to work, that sleep was Netflix's competition. A little bit of a faux pas, but I mean, he was just trying to say, you know, you have to think outside the box of what your competition is. Like, what you're trying to introduce a new product into an ecosystem of things that people could choose to do with their time or that solve their problems, right? And so research can go wider than that. And research can also even go like, there's no competition out there maybe that you can think of, but your company has a competency. And so if the researcher sort of is a strategic thinker and thinks, what is this company good at doing that could do better than anybody else could do? I'm going to go out there and see if there's an opportunity, right? So what I'm trying to hammer home here is that research and design have an overlapping scope around what we traditionally call UX, but there are things that go on in design that are not necessarily to do with research. And then there are things that go on in research that are not necessarily to do with design. And I've run afoul of that because I've spent a lot of my time in that little left-hand area on the screen there, which has got me into trouble, and I'll explain that. So research is kind of like perception, you know, and I found this thing on Wikipedia. I was trying to look for something without a head, but, you know, that has eyes in the body. Researchers could be like, you know, your sensory system, and you have a haptic system where you know where the body is, you've got a sense of touch, you know what you're touching. And if you put research in design, it's kind of like putting research in the body because it's looking at what you're doing, the stuff that designers are designing, or it looks at where you're standing, the stuff that you're designing just, you know, now we're going to do this thing next because this is where we are now. But that means that you're kind of not looking where you're going, right? And I feel like research should be able to be talking higher up in the organization at a strategic level to the decision makers.
It appears you haven't shared your slides.
They're not visible.
Here. To share them here.
I am so sorry. I didn't even know how to do that.
The BJ cable there hanging down, maybe.
Yeah, it's like oversight. Hello, everybody. I'd like to start again. I do apologize. Hold on. Normal. I need a dongle. I was connected to this thing here, actually. So I don't have that. This is, oh yeah, maybe I do. Do I have that? Yes, I do. Oh, great. Good thing this is not my personal. Oh no, yes. I've got all these lovely papers.
Oh, please, we have some technical difficulties. We're working on it. We're bringing the speaker back in Zoom. Hold, please.
To people, it should have, who make decisions, it should have a seat at the table. It can be in the design organization, but I'm just saying it can exist outside of the design organization, right? And so, you know, like high value research can sort of be happening without necessarily even touching design. And I'll show you later on, I'll just tell a little story about how this sort of got me into trouble because I was doing research that didn't even get seen because it wasn't in design at all. And so, are we good yet?
So are you using Google Slides? Do you have anything local or no?
Oh, let's just do this. Let's just close that and go to Drive. Just start again.
Sorry for this.
Okay,
now I know where.
This is the right, no, it's the wrong version. This is the right version. All right.
That's good. We even post
Never-
the other ones and don't confuse.
Yeah, I'm not confused.
Delegation has its limits.
All right, slide, they won't even have presenter notes. There we go. There
No,
we go.
no, if you have a presenter notes, if it
Yeah,
is
no, no, no,
No,
no,
no,
no.
no,
Simple,
don't,
simple.
don't.
Don't change anything.
No, but I need to turn on back the.
It's still not on there. So
Yeah.
we need to do screen mirroring. He's gonna do his screen mirroring.
Okay,
quick.
Okay, I was worried he was going to go for something fancy.
Jonathan.
No, we can make it more fancy, embellish it.
Oh boy, yeah, I hope you're gonna edit this video. Close those. Yeah, thank you.
Why it's not doing good? That's maybe true.
Yeah.
Okay, and you want to
Okay, I'm good now.
unmute? You want to unmute?
Am I on mute again?
Are you on Zoom?
Unmute.
I can share screen too.
Oh,
Share screen again, like in the green button there.
it's, oh gosh. This one,
Yeah.
share.
Okay.
Do we have everything
Yeah,
now?
it's working.
Are all our ducks in a row?
And are you, do you have your video turned? You can.
It's not going to do that, is it? It's not going to put that there, is it?
You turn on the camera or
Um,
turn on the camera or no?
She should turn on her camera.
you know how to minimize this annoying little thing at the bottom here?
Yeah. Let's click the camera. Yeah.
Start video? That's going to show me that
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine. We want that also.
Okay.
We like
And
seeing
can
it.
we get rid of this
It goes
little
away
widget
after
at the
that.
bottom? It will. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So,
Starting over.
where were we?
Starting it again.
No, we're not starting from the beginning, but we are hopefully restarting in the middle. All right, so this is my little chappy with the eyes in the body. So the idea is that instead of having like your eyes in your belly, you kind of want research to be up there, looking far ahead, and like having the ability to talk directly to people at the top level. It actually does. It can be both in design and out of design, but it just needs to be also out of design. So, you know, opportunity ahoy, research sort of looking far afield. Everybody maybe around in the ship is worrying about the shark-infested competitive waters. I don't know if you ever read that book called Blue Ocean Strategy, but that's, yes, right? That's a really nice book, which just basically the idea is, you know, try to like, instead of just trying to improve on what's going on around you, think ahead, think outside the box and think of new products and opportunities that nobody else is doing, right? And that's your blue ocean. All right. So, but the thing is that research can't do that if it doesn't happen before you make these commitments, right? And so often, unfortunately, this is what happens. So here's one of my little sub stories, RIP PDR. The last time I gave a BayCHI talk was probably about 1997, 98. And it was about this company, and it was called Why Startups Don't Like Research, Even If It's Good for Them, or something like that. And the problem with this company was that it was owned by Xerox. It was like a spin out, and it was taking some Xerox technology and spinning it out to make its amazing futuristic portable document reader. And they had made all of these decisions and commitments and everything before I ever showed up to do any research. And when I annoyingly showed up with my whole research thing, I went out and talked to people. And the idea was that this was a document reader that was going to be given to executives. But at the time, all of their stuff was coming in on paper. So they would just have their administrative assistant just go scan all those things in page after page after page after page. And these people are not just reading everything. They're skimming through giant piles of stuff. So I had to find these assistants who were like going to be doing this job. And of course, there were no executives who just had their own assistant, right? They were sharing them, many people. And so there was one of these people who was having a nervous breakdown because she already had so many people to do things for. And so this was never going to happen. It's just very few people had this one assistant who they could rely on to do all of the scanning for them. That was only the beginning of it. There were so many things wrong with this product concept. And in fact, what ended up happening was I got kicked off the design team after I showed a video of people not being able to use the product because the user experience was so confounding. And so what did the head of the design, the product manager said? Get rid of her. This is going to be design driven, not requirements driven. End of problem. You never saw this product, right? It was sold for part. The company was sold for parts to Microsoft. They basically bought the IP and the thing went away. So, you know, that can happen when you bring in research late. So symptoms of being late, biggest symptom, really badly conceived product or service. I love Don Norman's backwards teapot because, I mean, that kind of sums it all up. No amount of research is going to fix a bad concept. You know, we can make that spout longer and, you know, it's just not going to happen. Other things that can happen, well, you end up being brought in, maybe every UX researcher has had this experience where, like, you know, you have to do this research yesterday because we just realized we don't really know what the customer wants, which ends up with, you know, doing very hasty, you're not very satisfied with it kind of research, but there you go. That's the situation you find yourself in. You can also find this embarrassing situation where everybody's literally, because they all got assigned to this project all at the same time, including the researcher, and nobody can do anything until the researcher's done with that did happen to me at one of my, I'm not going to say which one, but I actually, like, you know, literally the design team just ended up going off and like doing a beautiful like design vision of the product to sell it internally, except that it had already been approved. So, you know, So that you don't want that sort of thing to be happening. And the other thing is I've got like a little bit of a beef about the fact that, you know, there are many products, we're all familiar in Silicon Valley of those products that have been like amazing, you know, that's hours, thousands of person years go into sort of building these things, and then it doesn't succeed, right? You never hear about thousands of researchers doing like answering these questions that never turn into a product. The balance is always skewed towards let's build stuff as opposed to let's ask questions. And so if anybody knows why that is, right, come talk to me afterwards. But it's kind of irksome. All this is a really long-winded way of saying is that, you know, they never have enough researchers. And so wherever I found myself when I've been in product, I've always been deeply divided. And I've had anything up to 5 or 6 product managers at the same time, all just like, can we have a study yesterday? Please, please, please. So it's very frustrating. And if you don't have enough research, you know, you can kind of go on for a while, like sailing along happily, but not knowing that there are these kind of silent catastrophes like building up. And so you have like unexplained problems that, well, just like we can't answer this because we just need to get something built now. So we'll make some assumptions, we'll make some decisions based on those assumptions, we'll just put a product out there and we'll find out if the customers like it, if they buy it or not. And then, of course, you know, there's the unearned profits. Now, a lot of companies in hypergrowth are not interested in UX research, or they were not. They actually, it's become more like the standard now, but I certainly about less than 10 years ago, there are a lot of companies that are big names now that you couldn't even get a job in as a researcher because they just didn't have researchers. And they were like, we're in hypergrowth, so obviously we don't need research. It's like, but it's still unearned. You could be in even bigger hypergrowth if you had research telling you to make a great, you know, even better product. And then there's this problem of the unknown existential threats, which is, yeah, you may have a customer base, but if you're not talking to them, you might not realize they're only tolerating your product until something better comes along, right? And so this is a sort of silent catastrophe, building and building until, oop, that competitor comes along. And then suddenly, bam, you know, you suddenly find you're losing all your customers. They're all running off to go buy Figma, for example. Like, look what happened, right? Everybody sort of shoot over to Figma, and all of these other companies started like losing business, right? But by that point, it's too late. So it's always, you really, really kind of have to have your finger on the pulse. It's a super competitive game out there, and research can help you win. So we're never enough to go around, and until there are like clones of all of the researchers, then we're going to be in this situation where there's not enough research to go around, and we're all going to be asked to do way too much research. And so the rest of this is directed at UX researchers or people who want to get research done, which is hopefully you guys and the remote audience. So here goes. I want to start by talking about diminishing returns. So this is foundational to what I'm going on about here. Product research does not have to be 100% scientific quality. Somebody's chair is just broken, I think. Are you okay, Edwin? Okay. So, you know, the more people you study, the more time you spend talking to people, the more you start to see the same thing over and over. And I think, you know, Norman and Nielsen on their website, I mean, they talk about how they did some really careful research into figuring out how many people you need. And it's not very many people. And I still run into people in companies, even startups, even younger people who sort of say, oh, do we need like 10, 20 people? And it's like, no. So you don't really. You know, what starts to happen is that every additional person starts saying more and more of the same stuff that you've already heard. So depending on what you're trying to do and what the, you know, like the fear, what the risk of failure is, you don't really need to do scientific standard research. You do sometimes, but not in most cases. And every additional bit of polishing and refinement you're doing on your wonderful study could well be an opportunity cost. You know, it gets to the point where your time could be better spent delivering much more value somewhere else where they don't even have a study yet. So this is a quote by me. It's better to do 3 studies well enough than 1 study perfectly, or name your number of studies you can get done in the space of 1 scientific study. It could be more than that. So I'm about to launch into the meat here, which is my tips for how to be fast. Some of this is, you know, standard practice. It may not be super original. Some of it might be a little bit more not common practice, but we'll see. So I like to start with like a checklist. So any airline pilot will tell you if you work in a high pressure, confusing, chaotic environment, a checklist is always a good thing to have because we all forget stuff, right? And so what I do is I create a template. This is my template research plan. And right there, I have a checklist at the beginning. Like I ask myself these questions, right? And it's too teeny for you to see here. So I'm just going to blow this up, right? This is the checklist. And I'm going to go through each of these and explain them in turn. So here we go. So the first one is, are the research questions your highest priority? So, you've got to be wise to competing product priorities or get competing PMs involved to align on priorities. So by sharing your roadmap. Now, I just want to talk about like a little like cautionary tale here. So I'm nice. I want to please people. I'm maybe too eager to please. And so I always like to say, yes, I'll do. And I made the terrible mistake of over promising in a really unfortunate situation. So when I was at Lyft, I was working on autonomous vehicles and I had two jobs. One job was the user experience of taking rides. The other job was not letting drivers kill people. So I was trying to help the safety drivers be more safe because this was just after Uber had the unfortunate incident. And so, they were extremely worried about that. And the PM who was concerned with safety was just like, this is your highest priority. And I was down in Palo Alto, whereas the main office was up in San Francisco, spending most of my time there. For the group in San Francisco, I did one study, they loved it, and then they never saw me. And so they ended up sort of writing a complaint saying, we have to work around Victoria. And that was unfortunately worded because instead of saying we need to hire another researcher, it sounded like I was being terrible in some way. We have to work around Victoria. Oh my God, she's such a pain. And I wasn't really like in a good position to defend myself. And also they were sitting right next to the design organization. So they were much more likely to communicate with the design team that I'm in the design organization, working in the operations in safety. Design never saw a thing. They didn't even know what I was doing. What is she doing down there? Like, no idea. We don't see any of that. So it was a very uncomfortable situation for me because I was told actually that, people really don't care what goes on in operations. And I mean, it's like, I have a PM there saying this is the most important thing you could be doing. And I'm like, yes, I will do that. So all that's to say is, don't make that mistake. It's really important to make your work visible. What are your commitments? Like, don't just make it be your problem. Oh my God, I can't satisfy. Just get it out there, right? And say, look, here's the things that are on my plate. I am working full time. I was working 7-day weeks, by the way. Really working extremely hard for Lyft and sort of feeling like nobody appreciates what I'm doing. So when I left Lyft and went to Netflix, I had an amazing manager, Zach Shendel, who is now head of research at DoorDash. And he said, like, why don't we just make like a sheet and then put everything in there and then put like the priorities in there, put all of the projects that people want you to do there. And then let's have a meeting with the product managers and they can duke it out. And that's what happened. And voila, problem solved. Product managers now have their expectations set appropriately. They can't have everything all at once. And they've agreed who's going first and how long it's going to take. And now I'm much less stressed and I'm not disappointing anybody. And it seems really obvious, right? It just seems, why didn't you think of that sooner? But I didn't, right? And maybe other people will benefit from that. It's like externalize your problems. If you feel like you're working super hard and nobody's appreciating it, make that visible because I think it will serve you very well. The other thing is that, it never hurts to say no. By the way, you actually look smarter when you say no, something else is higher priority because it makes the PM go, oop, is my project really the highest priority? Then they, so it's counterintuitive, but I've seen like Faraz Farzi, and she's another person from Netflix. She's also at Google now, but she is really good at saying, nope, I don't think that's the highest priority thing you could be asking me to work on. And I was like, oh God, that's impressive. I like that. So, learn to say no, because I think you'll gain respect. If you just always say yes, then everybody takes you for granted. Okay. So what is the cost of not doing the research? Like, it won't fail if the sky won't fall in if it's not, and a really, really like mission critical kind of thing. If it's a low risk endeavor, sometimes if there's just not enough research to go around, let it out the door without research being done. may also have pre-existing data that can be used. I'll get to pre-existing research in a minute. Also, sometimes the product manager knows enough to go forward. I mean, product managers have been in this game for a lot longer than the researcher. Usually they're experts in what they do. And so, sometimes you can trust them. Not always, but you can. And now I'm going to just say the opposing thing, and I'm going to argue against myself. So sometimes the PM knows a lot. They know they're an expert, but the problem is that the team doesn't know that. And so the team can hear the product manager saying, oh, this is this and that is that. And, well, how do you know that? But they weren't there with the PM on their knowledge acquisition journey, right? So sometimes, even if the PM does happen to know, and the PM is right, you may not know that. The rest of the team may not know that. So sometimes research can actually be beneficial, even if the PM does know everything, because it can back the PM up, right? And then everybody's on board because now they can see, oh yeah, the PM was right. This is what customers do want. We just saw somebody talking to, like they've observed the research. So you can be like this independent, objective person who comes in and supports the PM, or exposes the fact that no, they didn't know what they were talking about. It's all good, right? So that's, you have to kind of use your judgment about when to do research or not do research. Just getting onto that issue about using stuff that's been done before, you can't solve this problem unless you've actually made past research accessible somehow. And, there are lots of places where people just forget to share their research. And Monal Chokshi was the head of research at Lyft. She used to say, 50% of a researcher's job is publicizing the research, promoting it. You can't just expect to do the research and then give it to the product manager and you're done. You need to everybody needs to see that research. Often there's a lot of stuff that the whole company can learn from. So get it out there, build awareness. There's lots of ways you can do that.
That's a good question.
Yes.
You're using this word research. So often I almost want you to tell us what research is in the definition of what you're talking about.
Oh, I'm going to get to that.
Okay,
The methods. Yes, I'll get to the methods section. Maybe I should have done the methods first. I kind of assumed that everybody knows what research is these days. So, note to self, right? Next time, do it the other way around. I will talk about the actual methods that we do. But yeah, people won't know unless you promote what you've done. So, it's not enough to do just one of these things, but you can do many of these things, right? Sending it out an email, make a newsletter, get video clips out there, make it entertaining, give a presentation to everybody, or go and take it to the people who didn't come to the presentation because they need to know, or create a library and then constantly be badgering people. There's a library, put stuff in it, right? So here's an example. It's just a massive spreadsheet, which has every different study as a row. And then there's a bunch of data about all of the studies in there. And then, is your research input appropriate? So, you may be overloaded. You may be an expert at doing expert things, and this project maybe could be given to somebody who's maybe not as senior, not as expert, or whatever. So there's a number of ways you can deal with your overload, right? So you can ask a junior researcher to do it. You can ask a contractor to do it. You can actually help designers. When I was at Netflix, I actually made a guide for designers to do their own research on user testing, and then I would review what they proposed to do, make sure that they weren't making any mistakes, and so that offloaded a lot. Even product managers, lately I had a group of product managers said, there's not that much wiggle room in what the outcomes of this can be, so we can just do it ourselves. Master's capstone projects are really great. I don't know if you're familiar, but a lot of these master's programs now have these sorts of capstone experience where they kind of partner with industry, and they will sort of bring a whole team to do some research for you. I wouldn't advise making this be critical path because it takes longer than product cycles. But if it's something like a little bit further out that's low context, they will super over deliver. And I would just advise them for maybe half an hour a week for a semester or two, and get this math. When I added up the hours that it would have taken me to do that work, it was like a 10x, because the students were just really, really prolific and did great work.
Sometimes General Assembly is an example of an organization that likes to find people to do things like that.
Well, actually, I was going to say, I've got the one that I know is called Parker Dewey. So this one is, it's a platform. I discovered this while I was at Netflix. So Jeffrey Moss is the CEO. You just Google Parker Dewey and you will find them. And what they are is it's a platform where you basically post a job description, And just this is me like talking about the one that I was doing at Netflix, right? And then a whole bunch of people will just apply and they will describe, they put a paragraph explaining why they are, you know, qualified to do this and why they're enthusiastic about it and what their qualifications are. This is Olabanji Sonuga, who did a project for me while I was at Netflix. And, you know, it's again, I mean, I think he was an undergraduate at the time. And even with that extra supervision, it was still more efficient than me doing it, right? And he ended up doing a great job. And it was a win-win because it was, students often find themselves in this gulf where they've just completed their qualifications and every job out there is like, needs 2 years experience or more. And so this is helping them get over that gulf. So I always feel like that's giving back as well. So recommend Ted's recommendation. What was it called again?
General Assembly.
General Assembly, Parker Dewey. These platforms, people should use them because they're out there.
Maybe even people at BayCHI are interested in management.
Yeah, yeah.
But they should like have like an NDA, you know, proprietary information, right? How do you do
Yes,
that?
the question was they should have an, yes, the students will sign an NDA. So everything is, you know, confidential. All the master's students do it. The students on this platform do it. That's standard practice. Yeah. And then following on from, well, you know, more junior or less skilled people, what about more skilled people? So you might have other people in your organization who can advise. Maybe they don't even have to do the research. They can just tell you, right? So you might have domain experts who might be researchers who've been doing this for a long time, or subject matter experts, like the sales people sometimes like have deep subject matter expertise, and they can sometimes like, you know, tell you like all the customers. So that's a place to go. And then you can facilitate all of this sort of like, you know, being a brokerage for which projects should go where by having office hours. And so that was something that we used to do at Lyft. It's something we used to do at Netflix, where you would basically have somebody who knew everybody on the team and who was an expert at what, and then could sort of reach out to people. So people would come to office hours, say, here's the problem, this is what we want done. And then they would reach out to the right person to do that, so that a more efficient person would do the project than just the random person who the PM might have come to with the problem. And talking of PMs coming with problems, PMs will sometimes come along and say, I want you to do a survey, need a really big survey. You know, they'll come with like this thing in their mind that I need this done because they got to be in their bonnet about this is the right thing to do. Why? Why do you need a survey, right? So then you can sort of start like pushing on that, testing for hidden assumptions, because quite often it's not what they want, right? They, you know, and I'll get onto surveys in a bit and other methods. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. You know, like just figure out, like, given all of the pressures you have and the time scale and everything else, like what's good enough. Like maybe 5 people is fine. If you can't find enough people, they're really rare birds, hard to recruit, then just stagger the research, you know, do that interview just with that one person. One person is better than no people. And then, you know, like you'll get another person later on. So don't like, you know, hold things up because I'm not finished recruiting 12 people or whatever it is. You could also find colleagues who are or who used to be target users. And another thing is like when somebody comes to you and says, I want this big at scale, usually qualitative will get you 80% of the way there. And a survey may add a little bit more like big numbers on there, but you'll get most of the information, I think, out of doing qualitative in my experience. Methods and tools. Ted, get excited. This is your section. No, I'm not really going to be talking about this stuff, right? I will. I mean, it comes up. You can't avoid it, but that's not the focus here. So, yeah, what methods and tools are best? So just to say, you know, like during product development, when I say during product development, before product development even begins, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you should know. People often don't know. It's amazing how often people don't know. You know, mostly now people kind of know who their target user is, and they kind of think about the context, maybe. Maybe they think about the relevant practices. They think about the needs, possibly the problems. Occasionally think about competing solutions, although I've actually rarely been asked to do a user study of this and the competition. Interestingly, it doesn't come up much. So that's something that as a researcher, you might want to push back on. Hey, we shouldn't just study our problem, the problems that people are having with our product. We should also include the competition. And then this weird one, hang on, I'll finish this slide and then you can ask the question. This weird one, beliefs and expectations. Now, it's really hard to sell a product to a customer that doesn't think that they have the problem your product is trying to solve. So it's something that, if you're trying to be really innovative and doing that foundational research, you kind of want to check in that this will be an easy sell. And not only that, but that your company is has permission to play. Like if you work for a company that customers don't trust, then you kind of might have to rethink, like they don't trust us to do this. We're recognized for doing that. So then we have to do some extra work when we do this product to make it so that customers will believe that we can deliver a solution for this. That's okay.
Well,
I just wanted to stick on that competing solutions, and that when I was doing my PhD, my manager said, well, how's it compare with best of breed?
Best of breed?
The best that other people do.
Mhm.
And I didn't, I went and tested it. And what a fantastic question that is, right? Without knowing how it competes with other things that are going on, how do you have any idea
Yes,
what you've done? So
exactly.
that's all.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Benchmarking. Ooh, think of that.
Yeah.
All right. So before product development begins, you should know a bunch of stuff. And if you don't know, then do this before. And in any case, during product development, you can use methods like these. This might not be all of the methods out there. There's a whole bunch of more rare bird things, but these are like the bread and butter kinds of things. So the first one is live interactions. I don't really need to say much about this. I'm sure everybody knows what we mean by interviews. I try to keep them down to half an hour. I think, people's time is precious. I try to get everything packed into half an hour. It's not always possible. They can go up to 75 minutes sometimes, but not advisable. People get fatigued. Obviously, putting design assets in front of people. If you're a UX researcher, you should learn Figma. Does anybody not know what Figma is? Everybody knows what Figma is, right? Does anybody not love Figma? No, I think everybody knows what Figma is, and everybody who knows what Figma is pretty much likes or loves it. Anyway, and then I follow a strict plan with note-taking. So this is probably the real trick that I learned to get to go fast, was before we even do the analysis, let's collect the data in an organized fashion in the first place. So I'm a bit of a sort of disciplinarian with my participants. So I give them a whole preamble about, I've got a list of questions prepared for you. I want you to be very succinct with your answers. And, I will lead the topic. So you don't need to think, just give me concise answers to the questions, and I'll ask for more information if I need it. Do you have a hard stop? If you have a hard stop, then I apologize for interrupting, because I'm going to need to keep us on time. And even if you don't, I'm going to try to keep us on time. Right. So I'm setting it up so they don't ramble. Have you ever been in an interview where suddenly, because they've never done this before. They don't know what to expect. So you kind of have to set that at the beginning. And it's amazing how much better it goes when you just do that little preamble. Just an introduction to what we're doing here, because they don't know, right? Especially where I work now, a lot of very smart people have a lot to say, and so you kind of have to do that, and it works wonders. So then I get them going on that, and then what I have is a bunch of people who are observing. Well, but they're just sitting there observing. Let's not have them doing their email or looking at their cell phone. Let's have them taking notes, because they're using that time. They're there for that time. And I tell them, I give them a little bit of training. In fact, in this same sheet, it's a template. I love templates. There's instructions, how to take notes. Do it verbatim. Don't try to synopsize or think of what is it they really mean. Just take the verbatim notes, because that's not our job, is to interpret. It's our job to record what was said. And now I've got a great team who are really good at doing this. And then when it comes to analysis time, all I do is I go, what was the question? Here's all the answers. What's the question? Here's all the answers. And it's super quick. I can write up a report in hours instead of days. That's part of the, so now insert LLM thingy here. This is how a lot of people are saving time now, right? The thing is, there's a group called Measuring You with a little U, yeah, right? They actually did the study to see what was the difference between UX researchers and LLMs. And I think the thing to point out that really stood out for me from that research was that they found that the LLMs missed those single customer mentioned it kind of themes, right? And I often find that's where there's sort of golden nugget. There's one customer who nails it. They see it the way that nobody else does, but they absolutely nail it. And if you're summarizing with an LLM and you never really go back and really look at the data, you're going to miss that. You're also going to miss who said what, you know, how they said it. Like, were they saying it? Oh yeah, I remember that when he said that, he was sort of joking, right? It's that all is all lost. So just beware, like, you know, and these things have a tendency to hallucinate, you know. So anyway, so yes.
You're not interpreting when you're taking the notes.
No, it's not
But
your
there
job.
is a state. There is a stage where interpretation is
Yes.
necessary,
Yes.
right? And is that after the LLM does its thing?
Oh, when the LLM, no, I'm talking, the LLM is a totally separate thing. The LLM is just summarizing and then writing a predictive string of letters after, you know, it's
Right.
not doing anything.
So it's after this, the window where one might use the LLM. Is that correct?
I don't use LLMs in it. So I think you can,
Even better.
it's, your mileage may vary from these things. I mean, you like take it at its face value. I wouldn't advise it, or you might actually want to go look and see, hopefully like the tools that we get with these LLMs in the future will actually give you pointers to exactly where it's summarizing this stuff from, right? You still need to go back and check. You know, and that's one of the things about LLMs is that, you know, it's really, they're so much better if they actually point to their sources, because you can have much more confidence if you can actually go and see what was actually said. So, and anyway, I don't need them. You know, with this technique, I'm actually very efficient. We just go through this stuff and I can analyze it so quickly. I don't feel like I really wish I had an LLM here. I don't deal with transcripts. I never look at transcripts. I don't go back and look at the video. Honestly, most of the research I do, I've not been even using videos. Just rely on notes. It's good enough. It takes too much time to go back and watch the videos. Okay, live interactions, tools, platforms. There are all of these things out there. User testing and Dscout are two of the big gorillas. I think they're actually starting to add LLM technology. I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but you know, it's everywhere. But these things are incredibly valuable tools, although not everybody can afford a license to use them. So my good old spreadsheet technique will, you know, stand you in good stead instead of their fancy smart tools. Yes, then there's oh, that was unmoderated. So you can use these for doing actually live interactions directly, or you can do these tools, you know, you write a script, but you kind of have to be, you have to anticipate everything ahead of time. And this is the thing that I would not delegate to anybody else, like a junior person or a designer. I would definitely hang over them, because you will find that people forget to think like the customer. And so it's an art getting these things done right. Behavior in the wild, observing people. You might actually want to go out there and watch them or intercept them on the streets or whatever. They love this famous quote from Margaret Mead: what people say, what people do, and what people say they do are entirely different things. They're not entirely different. You can ask people questions about some things, but you have to have the knowledge to know which of the questions you can and which of the questions you can't ask, where you're likely to get a more or less reliable answer, right? There's all sorts of reasons why people will try to impress you or be agreeable. Oh, good story. Did a study where we actually were interviewing people and we would ask them to rate how much they liked this thing we were building, and they were giving it like an average of about a 6 or a 7 out of 10. But the people who were using the tool, who were like on their own and where they were like reporting, like just the same survey, 1, 2. That's the effect of the agreeable bias that people have, right? People want to be nice. So just bear that in mind when you're interviewing people.
Yeah, some of those tools like Discount or User Zoom, like a lot of the people there are actually professional interviewees. They have like as a side job for their gig, right?
That's right.
And
it's very true.
And then I feel that it influences the way they are honest, or like or they kind of can a little bit
Repeat the questions when people ask them.
Good. So I am being asked if these people who show up on user testing or Dscout or whatever are professional study participants, and they are. But they are also human beings. And so again, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, or whatever your metaphor is, right? You kind of have to bear that in mind. And so you'd have to say in your report, but of course, these people, you know, whatever, right? But I do say that, you know, I've had experiences, and it's especially bad with surveys, which I will get onto in a minute, where it's really bad data. But they're aware of this, and so they're actually monitoring, and it's a little bit like, you know, rideshare or something. So you get to rate your participants. So if you get a bad participant, you can give them a bad rate. So as a result, the quality of the participants that we would get on user testing were actually better than the ones that were brought in by recruiting companies. Yeah, we would get sometimes people brought in by recruiting companies that we'd have to, there was one we fired in the middle of the interview because they were looking at their smartphone while we were interviewing them. Okay, so, you know, yeah, it is a problem though. Sampling is such a big issue in research, but again, you know, if you've got experience, I think you could sort of make a judgment call as to, you know, whether it's more or less of a problem. And I did have an issue at Lyft actually, because I was working on pricing. And I kept saying to people, you know, we're doing research with people who earn virtually nothing and they're participating in these studies. So of course we can't like ask them like questions about pricing because they're like totally skewed population. And I actually did a study to demonstrate that if you recruited people with a higher incentive, much higher incentive than people with a lower incentive, the people with a higher incentive were more like, they were clearly earning more than the people. We were bringing in people who wouldn't otherwise do it, who valued their time more highly. And those people were like willing to spend more than the people who were. So bear that in mind, right? Just use your common sense, right? Who are you filtering into your studies by whatever means you use? If you intercept them in the street, or if you get them on user testing, or you have a recruiting agency or whatever, just think about that. Yeah, good point. Okay. All right. Yes, observing people can be very expensive, you know, and still, again, I'm just saying, you know, sometimes you have to do that because it's tacit knowledge. People don't really, they can't explain sometimes what they're doing, like driving, for example. You know, when we were like doing safety drivers driving, and you can't ask somebody how they're going to react when an autonomous vehicle has a fault, right? You have to be there. So, yeah. Okay. Diary studies, great way to save money and time by getting people to self-report. There are also like many platforms that like just like they're not even diary studies, but people are sort of like, you know, just giving you their feedback from products. And so I think that's great. Using something like Dscout, spend time with the platform because it's quite involved. It's not something that you can just sort of say, oh yeah, I'll just get a Dscout account and get this out done. You know, no, you need somebody who's got some experience with these platforms. Okay, surveys. Not recommended before using other methods. First off, you know, you want to do qualitative research first because you sometimes don't even know what questions to ask. And you'll get totally blindsided when you first start talking to customers about what customers care about may not be what you thought they cared about. And so you don't want to just send out a survey with a bunch of questions about what you thought they cared about and totally miss the things that they really care about. Interviews are much faster, they're cheaper, and like I say, they get you most of the way there and it can be done in a week. And whereas a survey is going to take you 4 times as long at least, and that's with help. Gen AI is probably, I wasn't going to talk about it, but I think it's going to change surveys because you will be able to sort of analyze survey data in an open-ended form as opposed to all of the scalar stuff. So we might see a lot of changes in how people do research, and you can even use Gen AI to do your surveys for you, and that actually does work, and it does produce human-like behavior, interestingly, for certain things. But you have to remember, it's all looking backwards. If you're doing something that the Gen AI has never seen before, good luck. I wouldn't trust it. All right, surveys, one thing. It's also the easiest method to screw up completely. I don't know if you've ever done a survey, designed a survey, but getting a survey right is really hard. You can end up like, you know, it's a bad idea to ask questions about this. Like, we can't even communicate properly to these people what we mean. So you can't have them be answering questions about a product that doesn't exist yet, right? They can't check their understanding with you before they're answering the questions about what do you think of X. The question design, there's whole books written about this. Right? Not writing leading questions, making sure you've got all of the bases covered. You have to kind of put it in front of many. Does this represent you? Does this represent you? You know, because you yourself will miss things. You just do. Bad sampling, we were just talking about that. The people who do surveys are professional survey takers. The platforms that actually is the dirty secret. Like they say, we screen people in. We don't allow people in who've done this survey too quickly. They allow them in about a quarter of the time that it took me to do my own survey. Right? I know the survey. I know what I'm talking about. I go through the survey and it takes me 10 minutes. These people are getting it done in like 3, or less. And they're still letting them in. And what do you see? Straight lining. You see this Christmas tree pattern. I'm trying to like get past, you know, you won't spot that. And I would just conditionally color code everything. And you would see half of what you've got is garbage, especially if you've got a long survey.
How do you feel about long surveys? And how do you feel about long surveys?
Don't do them. Yeah. So yeah, that's the bad behavior, bad design and analysis, you know, like if you're inexperienced, like you may have like got things mixed up, you have bad branching logic, or you might not know how to do the right kind of statistical analysis, or you think that significance actually means significant. It doesn't, it means high reliability. It's actually the wrong term, really. Statistical reliability, not significance. And yeah, so a statistical significant difference can be teeny. And in a lot of cases, like that's not really what you were looking for. And then, of course, people love big numbers. And so they get this survey back and they start making all of these inferences based on the survey data, which probably had bad questions and is misleading, you know, this. So get an expert, for goodness sake, somebody who knows what they're doing. And there are lots of really great specialists out there who do nothing but surveys. And I would, if I could, just always hand it off to them, because they're one of these people who can do it in a fraction of the amount of time that it would take me to do it. So got that out of my system. There's social listening. This is another thing that people do. There are platforms for it. There are specialists in doing it. It's not me. I'm not a specialist, but definitely it's a thing that you can use. And then I embedded intercept surveys where you just put something like 1 or 2 questions. There's a company I worked with at Netflix called Sprig, and they're great. These little quick surveys that you could catch people in the act and get like, what, you know, how do you feel about this? And that's fantastic. You know, it's really great feedback. Am I running too long? Let me know if I need to pick up the pace here. We're getting towards the end, by the way. Sketchy business. So very important. Now, I've mentioned Figma here. I love Figma. I'm a huge fan of Figma. It's been like taking over. It's been killing all the competition. Problem with Figma is it's also been killing sketching. And I don't know if you went to, you know, like in school, right? You know, you used to like get all of this, like, oh, get your rough ideas out on sketches and then put them in the rough form in front of customers. I would know when I arrived at Lyft, when I just came out of research into product for the first time, I never saw a single sketch anywhere. I was like, where are the sketches? There's no sketches. And we do, like occasionally, like somebody would have a brain, so let's just do some crazy eights or something like that. But as a matter of course, because they have a design system, they have designers who design the bits that everybody else uses. It's so quick to throw something together in Figma that looks finished. And so what the first thing you put in front of the customer looks like a finished product. And that does like have an effect. It's like, oh, it looks great. It's lovely, you know. And actually, no, I'm trying to get you to talk about the concept. What's the concept? Which looks lovely. So, you know, and we always found this, like the content and the look of the design really impacts how people feel. Like when we use Netflix, if you gave somebody something that was filled with shows that they didn't like, like, oh, this is terrible. It's like, no, I know you don't like that. What do you think about this? No, but it's awful. I don't want those shows. They're terrible. So, you know, we had to, how do we personalize a prototype, right? What I used to do was I called it reverse personalization. So like, let's make this content and then we'll recruit the people who like that content. So it's the other way around. And that worked like a trick. Okay. So let's lock up Figma, not have Figma, like those beautiful prototypes we put in front of people. Actually, better still, let's make Figma be a partner in putting your sketches in Figma. And I've been working with a designer recently called Jashan Kaur. She is a super overachiever. She's done these amazing like sketches in this study that we're doing recently. And we were able to put 40 different concepts in front of people in the space of an hour. 40. We got feedback on 40 things instead of, oh, I've made this really beautiful prototype. What do you think of that? Is it good or is it not so good? So there's 40 different concepts. And nobody was like, you're showing me too many things, you know. And then at the end of that, we get these and we can just take them and put them in a frame that has constraints vertically and just drag them upside. And then they can prioritize them really, really quickly. Beautiful. Works like a charm. So it's you know, Figma now is your friend with sketching.
And so she just like take photos or scan her hand.
I think I don't know how she did it, but she had these things that looked like little sketches, but they were beautiful. They were very neat sketches, which, you know, everything was just squiggly lines for text and like a gray area with like this, you know, sort of showing that this is the content here. So it got people to focus at the right level, at the conceptual level, rather than, oh, I think I need to see this, you know, a button like that, or like, is this too big, you know?
There was an application I've used for a long time, also make mock-ups, also wireframes, they call it now.
Yeah.
Is that a thing that you've seen?
I haven't used it.
It's
but you know,
it's sort of intentionally cartoon.
Yeah, well, that's exactly because, yeah, there's a niche for that. It definitely needs to be a part of the design process. Unfortunately, Figma is there to eat that thing, you know, so. Yeah, everybody,
Balsamic used to have this problem where
yeah,
it made everything look like a button. And I think with Figma, you can get into this rut
mhm,
of letting its affordances
yes,
direct your designing. And I love the way you put that actually about, that's what I was in
Yeah.
danger that I could do it.
Also,
yeah,
there's
that's right.
also- There's also in between state, like that, like you can have like a Figma, but like you take out the color, you take out some of the simplify the UI, remove like all the stuff. So actually, still like you have the easy way to edit and change things, because sketches are hard to edit. That's one thing as well as a side effect. Like you get the feedback, and sometimes you want to change for the next session something because you want to test something quickly.
Yeah.
Sketches are harder.
I think in Figma, you can probably like use like little component sketches to make up the bigger
Yes.
thing. And I believe that was some of what was going on, you know, because we had so much content and, you know, so I think you can reuse things and distort them to make them bigger or whatever, you know, so yeah, anyway. I don't want to get too lost in Figma and sketching, but let's move on. So big point I want to make here is like iterate, 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 iterate. We all know this, right? But if you're on a short cycle, then, you know, it doesn't really matter if it's not perfect, right? It's almost like if you have a longer cycle, the longer it is, the more you have to be perfect because you can't correct. Whereas if your cycle is really tight, then you can do a scrappy study. Yeah, it wasn't great, but the next time around, you know, we'll catch the thing that we missed this time. Somebody will tell us something that will make us, oh, we'll completely change it. You know, we can be so much more agile with that really tight cycle. So I want to talk about what I sort of started calling the flywheel when I started doing this, first of all. And it happens in any design team. It's where you get momentum, like everybody starts to buy in. It's a little clunky when you start, your first time you get together and start a process and it's awkward and you kind of have to persuade people and, you know, it just feels clunky, but then it starts to become a routine. And then suddenly it feels like, oh, this is a routine now. We're just doing it. It's rolling, you know? And that's what happened when I was lucky enough to be at Netflix. So I actually wound up getting from request to report in 1 week. And people do that. Yeah, they go, eyebrows go up, mouths go open. And it's like, no, actually, if you talk to a lot of skilled consultants, like UX researcher consultants, they'd be like, yeah, of course, I have to do that. You know, it's nothing special. And I'm not saying like I'm a genius because I can go super fast. It's because I focused on it and I just, you know, really focused on all of the tricks that could go fast. And if you were you're a consultant, you're going to do that too, because you don't have time to sit there and like, you know, pontificate. You need to get that project done so that, you know, you got some income coming in, right? So I think people who work in companies maybe don't feel the pressure to go as quickly sometimes, but you can. And yeah, let me show you. So why did I get obsessed with this? So I just want to tell another little sad story about why I became obsessed with going so quickly. And this is why I think this issue is really personal to me and why, you know, unless I'm tooting my own horn, I guess, but let me say, listen to this story. So I was at Lyft and I was in the autonomous vehicle group, right? There wasn't very many researchers doing autonomous vehicle research. And, but I was also like, you know, Lyft is a bit behind the curve here. We're not going to get this product out for quite a while. And I wonder, you know, maybe I could find a company that's more likely to have a product out in the near future. And I found this really, I'm not going to say who they are, but it's a really cool, like robot delivery service. And I was like, oh, great. So, you know, I applied. It's hugely competitive. There was like 100 people, 150. They tell you how many people are applying. You're like, oh my God, 150 people. I got right to the end of the process, not because I'm a genius, because there's almost nobody who could say, I have experience with autonomous vehicles. So, you know, that was a crucial advantage. But I got to the end of this interview process. And then I had this call with the HR person. They said, we're going to pass. I'm like, what? Well, the team felt that you were too rigorous and too scientific. Like, what? Nobody had ever asked me during this interview process, can you be fast and scrappy? And they're like, we'd like somebody who's fast and scrappy. And I thought, what? I was doing all of these studies in like short time, but Lyft had charged me with making sure that nobody had an accident. You can't do scrappy research on safety. I'm sorry, but it's just, you had to have something that was super rigorous. And that was what I showed them. It was like, so, you know, you should be pleased to have somebody who knows to do, like, if one of your things has an accident, you know, like, you'd be able to point and say, well, we did serious research, you know, we did the best we could. Not that we did a quick study in a week and we thought it was all right. We were just like this robot on the streets, you know, but no, so they didn't ask me, are you scrappy? Can you do scrappy stuff? And I was like, why is that? And then I started to get paranoid and I was like, gray hair, wrinkles. Everybody there was 20 or 30. I was old enough to be their mother. And then I started getting paranoid. It's like, oh yeah, maybe they thought like I was doing all of this scientific stuff and I'm kind of older and maybe I'm set in my ways and they'd never be able to get me to stop doing this. You know, if I could do scientific quality research, then I could only do scientific quality research because you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I took objection to that. No, I'm gonna like show those people. That is why I became obsessed with this idea of being scrappy, because I really felt like, gosh, you know, maybe that's what people think, is that as you get older, you start slowing down. And so it became a paranoia. That is why I say, you know, I'm proud to be able to say, I can still do it. I can still go quickly. Please, please, please don't judge me for the gray hairs. So, all right. At Netflix, I had this really great opportunity to do this really super fast paced stuff. We did this 0 to 1 project called Tudum, and it was supposed to be Tudum.
Yeah.
In case you're wondering why it has such a weird name. Is that too dumb? That's what people said initially. So anyway, it's Tudum. And what we wanted to do was to create like a site that would like really be there for fans when the season ends, right? Some place where you could go and like just revel in like all the gossip about like the next season, or like the bios and the backgrounds of the actors and all that sort of stuff, or go behind the scenes and find out what's going on. So it's supposed to be full of all of this interesting content. And I don't want to go into that because I just want to talk about the process behind it, because this was where this whole flywheel thing started to happen. So this is where we got to this, you know, from Monday to Friday. That's our cycle. We're going to do like research every week. And so how did that work? So again, it was clunky. This didn't just happen overnight. And it did depend on the fact that this was a team of people who had great relationships with each other, really trusted each other. They were in a culture where, you know, we're all pulling together. There's no like, you know, your gain is my loss or any of that stuff going on there. Netflix is a great culture, by the way, really good culture. So we would start by harvesting research questions. I would actually, you know, that template document that I had there, that could be a place just to dump questions, or we could have a spreadsheet. I think the designers kept a spreadsheet where they would put their questions, but they would be coming in from other places too, like branding, or I forget, other places anyway. It wasn't just design, because research goes beyond design. And then we would, you know, have those available. So then on these Mondays, we would have this weekly meeting and we would present the previous research from the week before, and then we would plan the next one. So we look at the questions, what's the highest priority here? Okay, we're going to do this. This is this. So we all agree. So then, and then I have to say, oh, by the way, I didn't give credit where it was due. I have to say, Danielle Gutman was the researcher who actually, she was my contractor on this thing, because I was actually working on multiple different projects. So she was the one that actually did the research. I was supporting her. Let's see, there's oh gosh, there's so many people. I have to say that you know, I couldn't have done it with this amazing team. Kevin O'Connor was the designer. Yeah, he was really great to work with. So anyway, that said, so this amazing team, so we would all agree on what the questions were, and then have this you know, contract at the end, like, right, okay, we're going to like produce this document. So Danielle would then very quickly write a plan. Here's what we've agreed we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. So she would write the plan and the discussion guide, and then everybody would give feedback on that. And then we would be socializing it around the team. So anybody who felt like they had a stake in this would get a say in this. And then we finalized the plan and developed the assets. So this is where me like picking up Figma skills was really handy, because I didn't have to sit around. The designers were really busy too. And they found just like, make that text a bit bigger. Can you put that, just that widget in there? I eventually was like, no, I have to do this myself, because it just was a bottleneck. And so I got rid of the bottleneck, and it really helped speed things up. And then we would be recruiting and running participants. So recruiting participants actually with user testing, you can actually do it on the same day. I mean, it literally takes like a few hours to get your schedule completely full up. And then we would run the participants maybe on the Thursday. By the end of the day, we've got everything. And then Danielle would be able to write up a really nice succinct report and have it ready for Monday. She'd be done by Friday. And I tried to do that. I tried to always read, you know, like I get to the end, I literally start writing up my report on the day, the last interviews. Don't leave it because you start to forget. And so, and I do try to keep it to no more than a day of writing up. And so when I left Netflix and I went to DoorDash, we're nearly done.
Okay.
We're nearly done. This is like the last few slides. I was able to actually do that on my own. So, and I had to get friendly with Snowflake and SQL and pulling my own, still could do it on my own. And so, you know, and I'm saying this is, anybody can do this. This is not rocket science. Okay, one last point, the next to last point. This really matters. You need to have great relationships. You need to build really fantastic relationships with people on your team. If you find that like people are resisting, like not agreeing with you, pushing back, right? It's not because there's something wrong with the research necessarily. It's because you don't understand what their position is. Like they don't trust you. You're trying to convince them, no, I talk to people. You have to have a great relationship. So sometimes if you're mystified why it is that people just won't listen to the research or why they need to do research, it might be that you need to build those relationships up so that people actually will, you know, like accept you as a member of the team who is trustworthy and pulling in the same direction as them, not there to criticize the designs or something like that. And then caveats. Obviously, if you're doing safety research, health those kinds of research, this stuff doesn't apply. You need to do that stuff right. I'm talking about the just good enough stuff for most product design, right? And then the other thing is that researchers are not fungible commodities. There are very different kinds of researchers. You have, you know, wise old owls. Hopefully I'm a wise old owl. I like to think I'm wise. I'm definitely old. And then, you know, there's like the weird ones who are doing eye tracking and interaction analysis and conjoint survey design and all that sort of stuff, right? They are specialists. This doesn't necessarily apply in any of those kind of places either. And then also research vary, like in experience. So like very beginner research will probably not be able to do this weekly cycle and shouldn't be put under pressure and made to feel bad because they can't. You know, that's just not fair. So just bear that in mind when research is very different. So anyway, so hopefully if you're interested in generalist kind of research, then this was good for you. And if not, hopefully there was something there for you anyway. So I'm done.
Well, thank you so much. That was a very.
Sorry, I went on a bit. Yeah.
And when I was thinking about, I'll just tell an anecdote and want your opinion about it. I was running a study where we wanted to check voting for people with reading disabilities. And so we recruited very carefully with a survey, had a third party get the people because, you know, these are, you know, people in the protected class, you know, and you know, with our IRB, which I didn't hear you say once, by the way.
Yeah, I actually was a chair of an IRB once, so don't get me started.
Well,
I've done all the training. Don't get me started.
Some hooks you can ask. But anyway, what we found was the people that we recruited that had their documentation of having reading disabilities came through. We put half people that had reading disabilities and half that didn't. We paid everybody $50, and that was in New York City at a voting. We rented a real voting place. And what we found is that the people that were off the streets getting that $50, which is a lot of money for them, had more reading disability problems than the people who could document it, because those people had gone through training. And we had a terrible, terrible time getting any normal people in our cohort of 100 people. So there's this sampling thing that she glossed over just jumped out at me with that story, because it's so easy to think you're getting one cohort and not get them at all.
Oh yeah.
And you have to figure out, how am I testing who I did get? And what we did is we actually had an IQ test in the middle of this voting experience, which saved our ass. Because there were people in that cohort that had the IQs under 70.
Yeah.
And, you know, it changes everything.
Yeah, and then I didn't talk about accessibility research, which is a whole different ball of wax. Yeah, I mean, there's I've glossed over so much here. You know, I could have spoken all night and I probably wouldn't be done.
We want you to speak all night. And anybody have a question for her? In just a moment, I'm going to give you this microphone and hopefully it's going to work.
I have actually two questions. One is about what do you think about panels versus always fresh users? Like, for example, you have a panel that repeats every week or every month.
So what versus
Panel.
panels? Oh, yeah. It's a swings and roundabouts thing, right? Sometimes panels are very convenient. And you know, if you're having troubles recruiting, I mean, it's like for Netflix, we didn't need to have a panel because it's very easy to recruit Netflix watchers. And it wasn't, you know, like if we didn't quite get like a super representative sample, it wasn't the end of the day for design and a lot of the things. It doesn't, you know, you wouldn't expect there to be a big difference. I mean, you know, you could say if you want to, for example, get a panel of people, and there are actually accessibility companies who do have panels, for example, because you have to have, there's so many different disability, you can't just lump everybody with vision problems into, like there's totally different kinds of vision problems. Yeah. There's the people who read with screen readers, and then there's the people who need massive amounts of magnification, right? And then there's other kinds of visual problems like peripheral or central vision loss, you know. So even just within vision, there's just like a massive range of different kinds of things you have to think about. So that's a place where you obviously, like, it's better to have a panel, and usually a company that provides accessibility research will have their own panel of people that they work with who do that. And, you know, and that's just because recruiting the right people is just really, really hard. Yeah. And in other situations, like, there's no need. It doesn't, yeah, you know, probably we're not catching every corner case, every edge case, but for the amount of time it would take us to recruit exactly the right people, again, it's that 80% of the way there is good enough, you know. Yeah, we may miss out some special, you know, snowflakes whose needs are not quite being met, but in the interest of moving quickly and just getting good products out quickly, it's just sometimes we won't have those hard to recruit people. Yeah.
Yeah, I was amazed when you said, when you mentioned the flywheel, being able to go from research request to report in just 5 business days.
Yeah, you could do it in less, actually.
And your name?
And my name is Lucas.
Yeah.
Yes, I've only heard that in context of rapid research or rolling research programs. And to me, it seems like a big part of that was to speed up the data analysis. Mm-hmm. And how do you train these stakeholders to take notes and also get them engaged in becoming your learners? Self-interest.
They want the results yesterday, and I tell them, if you want the results yesterday, then this is how we're going to do it, because it will, you'll get your report in hours instead of days. And then, okay, I'll take notes. Yeah.
And how did you, what's the training look like for them to take good notes? You said verbatims.
Yeah, I mean, some of it was a bit of trial and error. I would realize, like, there is things that have evolved over time that we would learn together. Because I used to do it myself. I literally used to talk to people to type at the same time, and I'm not a touch typist, so that was kind of funny because I'd be like, question, typing. But these people would just be like, they would not be so good at first, and then they would get better and better and better. And it was just because I didn't have time to sort of, like, they're product managers or, you know, designers, they're really busy trying to get time on their schedule to do a training. It's just hard. So I would wrote out, like, here's the instructions, try to do these things. Do not paraphrase, do not synopsize, do not say what the implications are. That's my job, right? You know, stick with the question. Like, I will select the column I'm in so you can see. And then I will sometimes call out to them, we're in column BI, we just skipped that one because they mentioned that earlier. So yeah, it's trial and error.
Another question from
Edwin.
Okay.
And just following up in my head from our quick exchange earlier, my question is really, you're taking the notes, you're not interpreting. When does the interpretation happen?
So that's my job, because I'm looking at the big picture. I'm looking at what, like, multiple people said instead of latching onto what just one person said. And then, I mean, that happens in here, right? This is all of the inferences and connections that you're making, which you have to back up. You know, I have to say, this is what they seem to be saying, and here's the quotes that back it up. Maybe you'll disagree with me or not, but, you know, I try to sort of always, my research heavily indexes the notes directly. So you can, if you don't agree with my summary, go look at the notes and see what you think.
Couple quick questions. First of all, you know, you talked about the books. I mean, obviously, you know, I don't like making surveys that are more than 5 or 6 questions for certain kinds of things. Experimental design seems like super important, and you know, you've got it in your bones from 30 years of doing this.
I have a degree in
Yeah,
experimental
I know.
psychology, yes.
So the question is, for people that are getting started, where do you know, I know that people took some classes and everything, but do you have any, you know, just simple things to say to people that are getting started about experimental design?
Confounds. That's like, you know, sums it up in one word. Like, you know, there are so many things that can distort your results. So the art of doing a good experiment is to isolate so that there's no other possible explanation for what you're seeing. And, you know, that, I mean, it does, it's, you take degrees in this stuff. I can't just summarize it in short order. So, you know, like you have order effects, you have, you know, like explaining things to participants properly, making sure that everybody gets exactly the same treatment, things like that. Being in a situation where, like, so like, if you were doing it remotely, for example, you know, how do you know that like 2 participants are actually like looking at the same screen, even things like that, you know? So it's like very, very hard to get, you just have to kind of think about all of the possible ways in which there could be alternative explanations for the effect you're getting.
Well,
and then just isolate the,
But I go back to something you said earlier, which is try it on one person, right? If, you know, when you try it on yourself,
yeah,
if you can turn your objectivity your way up, you can find lots of mistakes. And we
actually,
tried
you know, I didn't
so,
mention
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Every study we do, we do dry runs. We definitely, because that even in like scrappy research, you kind of find, oh, this didn't work, really did it? No, we have to change it.
I think it's completely critical.
Yeah.
Belmer, you had a question.
Yeah, my name is Belmer. I have one more question. Like about if you ever tried synthetic users, like we did some experiments in terms of like actually like we identified behavior segments.
Yeah.
After some research, of course, and then we fed those behavior segments like in creating those synthetic users. And of course, you didn't want to replace research, like in the in-depth research, but it was very good for this quick iteration first cycle.
Yeah.
Did you have a chance playing?
I have not done that. No, I have not done that. And I mean,
Belmer, do you want to say a little bit more about
yeah, you should share.
Sure. Like I mean,
just give a good anecdote.
Yeah.
Something might work terribly, and something worked well.
Yeah, so pretty much like we have a situation where like very often we do like design sprints, right? And design sprints like several days in a row, and you have some ideas that you want to quickly test.
Yeah.
Get like it's like, is this like stupid or what I'm not asking here, or like and we could just input that idea to this kind of most of this guys was just like text based in that particular phase we were.
Yeah.
Hey, what about this idea? We're doing this and that and other things, and tell me what is a pro and a con for you. Of course, there's like a preparation for the touch user in terms of creating like, hey, you're now this person with this particular profile, right? And then the replies were pretty interesting, and we thought it would be standardized, but they're not. Like they're actually responding with different insights about different concepts that enabled us to quickly like, oh, let's actually close this gap here. Didn't think about, or let's like do something else that makes this more rounded. Yeah. And then after that particular iteration, we took to real people.
Yeah. What was the platform you were using?
We use ChatGPT actually, like because there's a way that you can say like, hey, now you're this person, and you input the profile or the behavior profile, and there's some kind of other variables that you just like clean up.
You had like a pro account, and is there like there's a I don't know, you know, I haven't used it that much. I know that like when you go in, there's like a whole bunch of things on the side that you can choose from. I'm just wondering like where is the option people should look?
Yeah, we actually worked with a developer to create a quick prototype using the APIs with a pro account. So that way you could set up like all this kind of part of the of the behavior
Right.
profile as a pull down
Yeah.
instead of having to type everything every time.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of YouTube videos about all of this stuff. If anybody wants to know, like you can just YouTube like how to do synthetic user. I'm sure there's plenty of videos on. I know there's also people like creating like new little tools. There's also like new businesses springing up that are also like trying to bring this to market as a product. And so depending on how much developer time you can get, like you can do it yourself. Like
Yeah, what's a hack? Like we did that thing actually in 3 days, the whole thing. Yeah.
So another thing I heard you say, Belmer, was you asked a question about panels. And I just want to make a comment, and then I'm sure Victoria has a lot to say about it. The history of focus groups is that there's become somebody that takes power and takes over and moves the whole group. And it's very hard to get consistent or objective results from those kinds of from panels. I mean, you want to tell me I'm wrong?
I have done that very, very infrequently, and interestingly, I did it to group interviews in Japan with Japanese teenagers, and the problem was the opposite problem was getting anybody to say anything at all. But yeah, I think it just depends, like some kinds of people are definitely there'll be somebody like that, and then in other situations.
But it's back to the cohort question. I mean, those Japanese kids have a very different, and by the way, they act differently depending on who's in the room.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had trouble with these Japanese kids where get the adults out of the room quickly and forever.
Well, what we ended up was getting out of the room.
Exactly.
We went and actually started interviewing them in cafes, and it worked much better.
Yeah.
We were in a giant big room with like, a half silvered mirror, and then there was like note takers and interpreters.
You gotta help us.
So intimidating, and they were going beetroot colored. They were so stressed.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that we don't go on all night, but because we're all a bunch of HCI professionals, these questions you guys are asking are actually based on so much interesting experiences. That's why I wanted you to go into your little bit of detail. So Victoria, do you have any questions that you want to ask? Do you want to use us in some sense as a sounding board for anything? Or
well, feedback really is like, was there any value in? I was thinking of writing this as an article. Actually, the idea started as an article, and so somebody suggested like do it as a presentation.
So I was saying you should write an article.
Yeah, it's written. So
That was
okay.
all I said was she should
go.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't know, because it's very hard to know if what you know is something that everybody knows, So that was my big question, was like how much of this felt like it was just, it's just preaching to the choir, or whether there was stuff that was sort of value add there.
yes.
I mean, we all know like COVID changed a lot research, right? In terms of like before was so much about like being in person and focus groups, panels, those kind of stuff, and COVID blocked that for a long time. What are the positive things from COVID that will stay forever?
You know what? The funny thing is that I was doing everything remotely before COVID. I guess because I was such an early adopter of things like Google Drive and delegating a lot to students. Before this started, I was just talking about time at PARC, where I developed an approach, which was where I would hire a whole bunch of students, and then and I would do more projects as I was consulting, and then this more experienced students would supervise the junior students, and I could just like do research at scale really quickly with a whole ton of students, and it was all being done remotely. And so in my case, I kind of got used to doing things over video. And then when I left PARC and started at Lyft, I think I did every single interview that I did there with customers, not the safety drivers, with everything with the customers was over video link. And then, so obviously the drivers in the cars, I was in the cars with the drivers. That was so much fun, by the way, doing fault injection studies. But yeah, so I didn't really feel the difference after COVID. I can't really comment.
Yeah, I would say that during COVID, I started doing a lot of things online, and very quickly I got to this momentum thing with I had a student in Paris actually, And we did experiments in days that blew my mind because I was used to the setup.
Traveling
and
takes time, you know? Yeah.
And-
Setting
and-
these things up takes your time, takes all bringing people in. Yeah.
And it kind of started with Mechanical Turk as people getting lots of people together, and then Craigslist bringing in people. But I think that we're now at a point where there are lots of ways of finding validated subjects, and one of the most dangerous ways is the professional subject.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were going to ask a question, Bob?
I mean, now the flip side, what was lost? Like, I have a little anecdote first to introduce. Like, I remember when my ideal times, like, we used to go to houses of people, right? And it's like, hey, what about, for example, your eating behaviors? Like, and they was like, no, I eat really healthy. I love healthy food. And then after a few minutes, like, we're like, okay, can you walk around the house? And then they start to, do you mind if I open your fridge? Sure. And then you open the fridge and you see like a bunch of junk food, right? So it's what we mentioned earlier, like what they say versus what they do, right? The difference of that, like, and
I
how
actually have a real parallel virtual story. So I was
how
at
do I assess that in a
DoorDash.
video call, right?
I was at DoorDash, and I was the first person to do a study of naturally occurring eating. So like, what do people, because we were doing a lunch plan and we kind of wanted to know, what do people eat for lunch? And we don't know. What do people like to eat for lunch? So, well, I'll do a study. So I actually asked people to describe, I interviewed people about what they did for lunch and like how they like to eat, you know, what was driving their eating. Oh, I like to try to eat healthy. And then I would show them a big menu and I'd say, if you pick something now for lunch, what would you choose? Well, I'll go for the like the beef, like, you know, like deep fried. It was just like they would like always skew towards the, you know, the self-gratification thing. Now, what was really interesting, so this was a parallel thing where I was trying to like see if like what they said and what they did was different, and it showed even over video I was able to get that thing. So yeah, it's kind of interesting because like I think you're right. Like, so like us trusting what people tell you can be a real problem. And I was lucky that I was able to sort of catch that with a mechanism where I was actually saying, you know, pick something for lunch now. And also what was really interesting that came out of that study was understanding like the difference between why when people shop for food for the week, they're actually doing this kind of like thinking of the future, which is governed more like the frontal lobes. It's kind of like what I aspire to eat healthy food. So they would buy healthy stuff from the supermarket, fill their fridge with more healthy stuff. But on the day, if they were ordering for now, then it's like the burger. It's because that's now the present self bias, which is like, I'm going to forget about the future and just gratify now. So that people, it meant that it was kind of in a weird position because the lunch plan was supposed to be like what people would eat for lunch every day. And if you want to put stuff up there that people really want to buy and not go to the competition, then you should put up the unhealthy stuff because that's what people will impulse buy. But really what people want to eat and what you really, you know, if you're like supporting their health, you should be putting the healthy options there. So what I ended up recommending was kind of like giving people stuff that was healthy, but had something like yummy on it, you know, that would be like, this will gratify, but also like it's got the greens, it's got the healthy stuff in there. I mean, I don't remember whether they would actually follow up, but I just thought it was really interesting just thinking about this. You know, I love human biases and I love when I get to do research where I actually get to sort of expose that stuff and say, look what's here, you know, like they say one thing and then they do something else.
Right.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can even design ways of ordering which bring out the planning instead of the gratification.
Yeah.
But in any case, we are getting a little late. And there's a few people actually starting to drop off the thing. And
Thank you.
And I think that it's a wonderful conversation. And after we turn off the mics and everything, we can stay for a few minutes. I could even walk people through the building a little bit and give them a feeling of what this place is. Maybe Pete could. But probably it's going to be time to get home because some of us are going to have to get up in the morning too.
We do.
Thank you, Victoria. Fabulous talk. Great to see you. All of your cheerfulness and
thank you for inviting me.
Well, and sharing all of this and putting this time and effort in. So thank you very much. And with that, I want to thank everybody for being at the June meeting. The July meeting will be exciting in a very different way. a person who will surprise you regardless of what he says. And we will make him correctly. And then on August, we're going to have Terry Winograd, and it's going to be in discussion, which is going to be really interesting because he has, a 50-year time of watching, going from being completely anti-user interface and a linguist to being one of the big proponents of user interface research and development. So very, very, we have good stuff going on. All of you think of anything you want to contribute, anybody you want to have me give a talk. You came up with one earlier. Thank you very much. And thank you for everybody for being here. And good night, says the new chair from BayCHI.
Congratulations.
Yeah.